Paul McCarthy from the GMB. This case is very distressing for the workers and their families, the families of the workers involved. What's the impact been on them since 1984?
Well, many of them from 84 onwards suffered financially through blacklisting. Many of them suffered pension rights, loss of redundancy, and most of all loss of their freedom by being imprisoned. And they carry the scars from that, virtually from employer to employer. But mainly there's a psychological distress that hangs over most of the members, in that they went to prison, what they believe unlawfully, on a legal strike.
You've helped to bring this case out to Europe. What do you want the European Parliament to do? What is perhaps in their power which could allow them to act?
What we want them to do is, first of all, want the petition to be heard and then passed along to a point where we can get some justice. It's one of those things which is very emotive word for the strikers, but people are owed redundancy. They're actually owed redundancy, so we'd like to see some kind of financial settlement, but mainly we'd like to see somebody acknowledging and apologising for the imprisonment, particularly in the category A prisoner status. So the monetary side is fine, but it's the acknowledgement and the apology for what went on.
Do you hope that, because you and the GMB and the workers themselves have tried to pursue this back in the UK, do you hope that by raising it here in Europe, it might, at the very least, increase the pressure for some kind of reaction, some kind of acknowledgement from the UK?
That's the whole reason why we're here, is to bounce it back to the UK, into the court system, or some kind of an apology from a government that will look at the papers, the historic papers, properly, and acknowledge that people should not have gone to prison, and the entitlement of any finance or pension loss is made right.
Obviously out here in Europe, in the European Parliament, they deal with EU law. How sure are you that in this case European law was broken?
Well, we're sure to this extent. We're part of the EU. The government signed up to the EU. It can't pick and choose which law it has. The EU has heard the petition, so we must be part of it. And therefore, that puts the UK government behind the eight ball to some extent, because it does belong back in the UK. We're quite happy with that. But it will belong to Europe first and back to the UK, which we believe is wrong. We should have been entitled to go to the UK and be heard before we come to the petitions. However, we took the European route, and that's fine.
It's taken 30 years to get to where we are today, and there's been no resolution so far. How hopeful are you that something will come out of raising this in Brussels?
We're extremely hopeful. We're extremely hopeful. We're not putting any timescale, for want of a better word, except to say that the petition today, we know that we'll get the judgment sometime next year. Then we'll take stock of it, and then we'll enact the next part of it, whether that be Europe after the decision or back in the UK. But we'd like to see closure soon, because we've lost too many of the comrades along the way.